Hi, I'm Valerie, and you're listening to The Beauty Brain. Welcome to The Beauty Brains, a show where real cosmetic chemists answer your beauty product questions and give you an insider's look at the cosmetic industry. This is episode 395. I'm your host, Valerie George, and with me today is Perry Romanowski. Hi, Perry.
Hello, Valerie. Great to see you.
Awesome to see you. On today's show, we're going to cover a lot of questions, Perry, including what is a good leave-in conditioner that only has a little bit of protein? What is special fraction petrolatum?
Ooh, special?
Is wet hair more resistant to chlorine than dry hair? How does violet number 2 work in hair? And what is a hair toner? Plus, one extra bonus question, can you layer an Ascorbyl Glucoside product over a product with just L-Ascorbic Acid in it? But first, inane chit chat.
Hey, Valerie, last time I did a solo episode.
You did. I was very busy. You were getting ready to go to, I think, Bulgaria after coming back from China. Our schedules couldn't align. And so I said, Perry, please. I have this road show I'm doing to Reno. I'll talk about that in a second. Can you please just get a solo episode out there? And you did.
Yeah, and I did. And, I answered like 10 questions because, there's only me talking, so I could say more. But then, I had this idea. I would just... Instead of reading all the questions, I would make
I already know where this is going. I already know. Let me guess. AI voices. Yeah.
Right. And, does anyone want to listen to me drone on for an hour without a little break?
I think people who hate AI voices would like to listen to you drone on for an hour. And have you ever thought people might like your voice? I get that all the time. People will say, I love your voice on the podcast. And there's even one hair researcher, Trevor Evans, in the industry. Sometimes I just put on his YouTube videos, even though I've heard them a million times because I love, the cadence of his British accent. Have you ever thought someone might like your voice?
Because I don't like my voice that much. So
yeah, I don't like mine either. I totally get it.
Isn't it strange? Because I like your voice is good, but maybe it's just people just don't like their own voices.
They don't.
I don't know.
I bet you there's a paper on that.
Well, I am now, based on feedback, and it's only a couple of people, because maybe everyone else loved it, but I didn't get anyone saying, oh, I love that. I got a few people saying, that's terrible. So based on the feedback, and it's really more work to do an AI voice than for me to just read it.
Well, third time's the charm, because I feel like people have complained in the past. It might be the same couple of people. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. But, the bottom line is it doesn't really save me much time. It actually takes longer. So I'm just going to read them.
Why don't you have your wife or, maybe Mr. Cosmetic Chemist could read them, but he wouldn't even do that for me. So if he did that for you, I'd be pretty upset.
Well, I just don't think does it really add that much? Maybe, like you said, people just do like our voice.
Well, yeah, I think they do. So I mentioned I'm in Reno.
Yes, you are in Reno. Are you, Reno is a divorce capital. Is something going on?
Well, no, it's not. Well, something is going on. The Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild annual show. Everyone, if you've listened to the show, you guys know I resell ingredients for people to make their own products. And there's an annual conference for this, actually, where we have a vendor table and we peddle our wares to people, but it's basically a 4-day soap making and cosmetic making conference. And Perry,
was that
you actually
same one we did in Canada that one time?
Well, that's the Handcrafted Bath and Body Guild, which is the Canadian guild of the same variety. So you came to that show in Canada. That's where the Americans totally killed karaoke, although we did a lot of Bryan Adams, and we totally killed trivia. It turns out at least Canadian home crafters are not very good at trivia.
Well, that is selling us short because we are really good.
we were. It also helps that I had Mr. Cosmetic Chemist with me, and one of my old chemists from Paul Mitchell was also at the show. She worked the booth with me. It turns out they're really into music, and a lot of the trivia questions were music based. I know nothing about music, so I think they helped us win.
Yeah, they probably did. So how is the show? Is it very well attended? Is it like a lot of people want to make their own stuff?
Yeah, well, it's a few hundred people. The audience in the US is a lot bigger than that, but they move the
Sure.
show from city to city. So it's
Oh,
sometimes the same people, so, a lot of different people show up because it's geographical. Next year it's going to be in Connecticut. It was in Kansas City a couple times. So they pretty much, just
yes.
move it around.
Well, it sounds like a fun show. And do they have like demonstrations of people making soap and their own stuff?
They do, yeah. And every year I'm like, I should totally sign up as an attendee and do like basic soap making classes, because at the show, people ask me questions like, oh, can I use this ingredient in soap? And I'm always like, I don't know, because I don't make soap, right? I know the
Right.
chemistry, but, I make cosmetics, not soap. And so they're
That,
always like, oh,
that is an interesting thing about the job of a cosmetic chemist. You do tend to specialize in a type of formula that you make. I mean, you learn the chemistry of everything, but making soap is not really something that a lot of cosmetic chemists will do. And it's been always been more of a handcrafter, homemaking kind of a thing than a lot of manufacturers do not make soap.
there's a lot of real chemistry in soap as well. I do a lot of saponification, and I
Hmm.
use a lot of the similar chemistry in hair color. But I don't do soap making, but yeah, it's very, very specialized.
Yeah.
Also, something that happened while you were in China and Europe, Perry, is Pretty Kitty had babies.
What?
Yeah.
That's right. You had mentioned she was pregnant. How do you know she has babies?
Well, on April 13th, I fed her. She came to the
Yeah.
door and she likes to stare in, and she gives Mr. Cosmetic Chemist and my other chemist, Renzo, dirty looks until they come get me. And then I come out and I feed her. We say hi, we talk. And she did that. And she was
Wow.
very pregnant. She looked grumpy, because it was hot and she was very
Sure,
big.
sure.
And I came in on April 14th and her bulge was gone. And she
Oh.
wouldn't come up to the door. She was waiting for me kind of by the entrance of her hiding spot. And I went up to her and I said, "Oh, you hungry?" And she hissed at me. And I was like, "Yep, the
Uh-oh.
kittens are here." And I said, "Don't you hiss at me." And then she meowed and said she was sorry. And I fed her. And I haven't seen the
Wow.
cats yet because they're only a few weeks old. But
Sure.
she's been around with Coffee, who is this other little black cat she's friends with. And we don't have a name for this cat, but her baby from her previous litter, who's now like 3 times the size of any cat in the neighborhood. He's so
Wow.
huge. They were playing in the parking lot the other
Oh,
day.
boy.
And then I fed all of them. It was really cute. So I have to get the catch and release traps. I know. I have to.
You've got the whole colony going out there.
I know. I know.
I finally got all of the porch kitties fixed. And so we have like anywhere from 8 to 11 porch kitties, but they're all fixed. So no more
Wow.
kittens. Yeah.
Well, no more kittens until a new cat comes along.
Well, none of the porch kitties are going to have kittens anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
There you go.
You won't become a grandfather anytime soon.
That's right.
Well, let's head over to beauty news. What did you see?
Valerie, I saw this Hollywood Reporter article, and it says the title was just the best new skincare ingredients, and I'm like, so I like to keep up with what's new, and so I'm looking through this, and okay, here's what they say is new, which does this sound new to you? Retinol alternatives, which is Bakuchiol.
Yeah,
They say
we've talked about that before.
plant derived. It offers the benefits of retinol, but no irritation or something like that. Are you sold on Bakuchiol?
Well, okay. So there's a couple places you can get it, and there's only one supplier. They've patented this extraction technique that
Yeah.
allows them to sell a really purified molecule isolate from Bakuchiol. It's not the same as getting a Bakuchiol plant extract or Bakuchiol
Right.
oil from other sources. And so they actually have, it's their own data. So again, you have to use a lot of caution.
Sure.
But at just 0.5%, I think it is, they show a lot of efficacy compared to retinol in terms of same efficacy but less irritation. So that's really what their data is driven around. And I actually had a project where somebody wanted to use more than 0.5% of this material. And I reached out to the manufacturer because all their studies were just done at half. And I said, hey, you don't recommend it at more than half. Would anything happen? And they were like, nothing would happen, but it would be a waste, basically. So
Okay.
don't do it. And I thought that was
So no.
interesting because people usually want to sell more of a material, and they were like, you don't need
Yeah.
it. So
Right.
that's what our
Yeah.
studies were
Well,
done at. And yeah,
maybe it's more difficult for them to produce it because it's got to be a limited supply, right?
it's very expensive.
Right. And well, there is. So that was one of them. So the next one was Malassezin, which is
A yeast.
derived from
Yeah.
yeast. Yeah.
Malassezin is a predominant yeast flora on your scalp.
Well, they say that this ingredient has been shown promise for brightening skin, reducing hyperpigmentation. Okay. I mean, the problem with both of these is, you're right, maybe they can have some special Bakuchiol extraction, but a lot of stuff you buy will just be somebody took Bakuchiol plant, macerated it up, and diluted it with propylene glycol glycerin and call it Bakuchiol, and it's the same name on the label. So as a consumer, you're not going to know.
And, I just don't like the term shown promise.
Oh, right. Shown promise, yeah.
Because promise is a future, right? Like a promissory note. I promise I'm going to pay you back. You haven't paid the person back yet, right? So,
So
I don't know. Shown promise is like a little future hope. And I guess that's what skincare is all about, is future hope.
I guess so. So, speaking of shown promise, and there's 3 more of these, there's growth factors. They say growth factors to enhance collagen production, improve elasticity. Growth factors have been around for a long time.
They're really employed, and I would say mostly studied in pharmaceutical applications. And so to me, that says, okay, if the pharmaceutical industry is interested in growth factors, there's probably something there. But again, I think the challenge is in a topical skincare product.
Right. Probably. If there was something there, like amazing, we would have got it by now. Sturgeon DNA caviar extract.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I listened to Chemist Confessions, those two, their podcasts, and they did a whole show on, I guess this is what, fish sperm or something?
Yeah, salmon sperm is another one.
Right.
People are really interested. It's funny. People don't want animal extracts until it promises something, right? Like a youthful appearance. And they're like, I'm cool with DNA from salmon sperm on my skin.
That seems weird. When I was in Bulgaria, somebody did a talk and they mentioned snail slime as a big trend in Korea.
I think it's still predominant, but I think it's more standard. I don't think it's a trend. It's just like something they use.
Right. But I don't think that would fly in the U.S. because, we try to avoid all these animal products, right?
Right. And I think, I found a new facialist in Dallas. She's really awesome. And she sells a lot of lines from Korea. And, they're really big into the salmon sperm and fish DNA right now. It's not something you would find, I think, in an American-based or Canada-based or even EU-based beauty line.
Yeah. Well, but, a lot of trends are started in Korea and brought to the rest of the world.
They have great skin there.
I mean, that whole Gangnam Style.
Oppan Gangnam Style.
I love that song, and I'm not going to apologize for it.
Oh, do not apologize. And the final one they say it in here is Coenzyme Q10, which that's been around forever. How is this new?
Oh my gosh. My mentor who passed away a few years ago, Dr. Ron DeSalvo, he actually took oral CoQ10, which I think is the best way to take it because he was elderly, we'll just say that, over 80. And he said it really helped him, cognitively. And he felt very sharp. Topically, I don't know if there's a whole lot of data with it. I think it can be challenging to use.
Yeah, I mean, it's been around a long time, and it's hard to get it to penetrate deep enough to have a big impact. So there you go. All right, that's what I saw. But you know what else? I stumbled on another article from Slate. I'm just going through my feeds, and I seen Slate, and I'm like, wait, Valerie George from the Beauty Brains is... And this is an article
That's me.
Peptide Skincare Moisturizing Serum Research. And you were quoted in this Slate article.
Yeah, it was a really great interview opportunity because, the journalist who contacted me, didn't know a lot about peptides to begin with. So we did a lot of talking and educating her on, on, peptide basics. And it was interesting because one of the things that she mentioned was that dermatologists say, oh, beware of brands who hardly use peptides at tiny percentages. They're not going to offer any value. And the interesting part for me was, well, it's interesting a dermatologist would say that because they know nothing about cosmetic formulation. Peptides are only recommended at very tiny levels. So 0.1%, 0.05% even, sometimes 0.2. But generally you want them at very tiny levels because they are biologically active molecules. And that's what all the studies are done at. You would never see a peptide used like the active peptide content at 1, 2, or 3%. I mean, that's crazy. If, maybe a raw material that contains a peptide, you would use it, but the active peptide level is always very, very tiny. So I just said, well, that's really terrible advice from the dermatologist because from a formulation perspective, it doesn't work that way.
Dermatologists are expert at handling diseased skin, not as expert as handling like aging and, day-to-day skin. So
yeah, I was a little disappointed that they quoted the dermatologist so much. Not gonna lie, but it's okay.
Like when you do an interview like that, how long are you speaking with the reporter?
This one I think was an hour.
And you had like one line or something, just a couple of lines.
A couple lines, yeah.
There you go.
But no, it was great, and I think the thing that blew the journalist's mind was most of the data there is a lot of data on, like, for example, copper tripeptide 1, which is CUGHK, that actually comes from the pharmaceutical industry. Tons and tons of literature on that one. So that's one I really believe in. But the other peptides, peptides, again, are biologically active molecules, but the studies come from suppliers. So again, you just have to take into consideration, like, who's giving me this information that it works. And that's the tough part. And skincare is about hope. You have to hope that using it pays off, and you're not going to know because you're not going to remember you use that product 20 years from now.
Right. You're also not going to remember like what your skin looked like 6 weeks ago, like so.
No, I think my skin looks the same as when I was younger, and then I see photos and I'm like, it definitely does not.
Definitely. Hey, Valerie, when I was in Bulgaria, there's a guy there from Australia.
Okay.
Which is interesting. There's his name is Robert.
Oh,
yeah,
Robert
from
Lubrizol. I met him when I was in New Zealand one time.
Yeah.
Small world.
That's right. That's right. Well, anyway, so I was talking to him, and he tells me about this story was going around in Australia about this dog. This couple went on vacation, and there's this island called Kangaroo Island, right?
Okay.
And they brought their dog, their little dachshund dog. And
Dachshund, you mean?
Right. Dachshund. Right, dachshund. I've always called it a dachshund, but you're right, dachshund.
But maybe it could be dachshund depending on the geography.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably have said it wrong all my life. Anyway, so the little dachshund miniature, they lost their dog. They looked for the dog for 4 days until they finally had to leave, and they abandoned the dog on Kangaroo Island.
Oh, and then, probably presuming it dead from the kangaroos.
Yeah, I couldn't find it. So then, on Kangaroo Island, they have all these cameras set up just to kind of monitor it, and they were seeing this little dog every so often get caught on camera. And then, so they've been looking for this dog. So somehow the dog befriended the kangaroos and was able to survive on this island.
For how long?
And they just found him 529 days later.
Oh my goodness.
So this little dog, but the only reason I bring the story up is because the dog's name was Valerie.
That's an unusual name for a dog. I'm not going to lie.
Valerie. So, but everything
Valerie
worked out fine.
Was rescued.
I know. Can you believe it that the little miniature dachshund named Valerie lived on the island with kangaroos for over a year and a half? So,
well, Valerie, the name does mean strong, at least when you look it up on Google and baby name books.
Well, that's a fun story. So, yeah.
We do have some listener feedback, Perry, before we head on to our questions. Our first one, we actually have 2 listener feedbacks, and the first one comes to us from a patron, Zach. Zach said, if Perry watched Lab Muffin's video on spray-on sunscreens, he wouldn't have gotten burnt by shady UV protection. Have you seen this video?
I did watch the video. It was actually a pretty good video. She goes through the whole. I mean, her sort of bugaboo is that the spray-on sunscreens do not deliver enough to your skin to actually give you adequate protection. So the whole video was her just measuring how much sunscreen you actually get delivered from a spray. And, based on her video and, based on what I know too, she's probably right. You don't get the suggested amount.
Yeah, spray-ons are the worst kind of sunscreen, I think, because people under-apply them. It's not rubbed out. You don't get that. You get a great droplet size, but not necessarily, the greatest protection. But on the contrary, there are lots of traditional cream sunscreens that also don't give you the protection. So
right. And I will say, in the defense of the spray-on stuff, it's easier to apply and it feels better. So.
Well, and at least you're actually putting it on. Now, if you only reapplied it every 2 hours.
Well, yeah. So, yes, and don't spray it right in your face like I do.
Do not.
Do not do that. But yeah, it's a good video. I'll put a link in the show. It's fun, and she always does some interesting experiments. She did another one with the. Have you seen that? The hot protector things on the receipt paper.
Oh, don't even get me started about that.
Yeah, we'll save it for another time. What was the other feedback we had? This one was from Darling. She said, hey, I just caught up on an old episode from last August, and Valerie had just hurt her ankle, and she talked about how clumsy she was. And then
that was when I fell down the steps in Albuquerque,
nice.
And I tore ligaments in my ankle and knee and hurt my hip and had to do physical therapy for 4 months. And I actually just went back to the coffee shop. Mr. Cosmetic Chemist has been there before, but I wanted to show him exactly how I fell down the steps. So we went back on our way to Reno and I showed him.
Oh, revisited. All right. Well, then Darling adds, then I put on the recent episode and Valerie just fell off a ladder.
Oh, yeah.
Girl, feel better, and you need to have more cushions and bumpers in your life.
Well, Darling missed the episode where I gave myself the black eye in January.
That's right. That's right. You are a walking rat.
Did I ever tell you what someone wrote to me on Instagram? Because I just put I got the black eye.
Sure.
They wrote to me, let me guess, you pulled on something that was attached to something else, and it came out unexpectedly from the thing it was attached to, and you whacked yourself in the eye. And I was like, how did they know? That's literally exactly what happened.
Wow. Yeah, there you go. Sure. Well, this is we can officially be called the Klutziest beauty podcast in the industry.
Oh, gosh. Well, let's head over to beauty questions.
Our first question comes to us from Carrie, read by Real Voice. Perry, hi, Beauty Brains. I listened to the last podcast, and it was about protein overload. Valerie, can you tell me a really good leave-in moisturizer conditioner with a little bit of protein? My hair is fine, curly-colored blonde, so I do need a little strength with a little moisture for my fine, curly hair. Thanks, Carrie.
Well, the interesting thing is, unless you're buying a strengthening protein-based product, most products only have a little bit of protein in them because you don't need a lot for that film to develop on the hair. And so I think any leave-in conditioner probably has just a little bit of protein. Now, I would probably look for different protein types because if you see like hydrolyzed keratin, hydrolyzed wheat protein, those are really stiff protein films.
Sure.
And so even if there were a little, you probably might notice it a little bit more. And so I would steer clear of those. But if you saw hydrolyzed soy protein, hydrolyzed pea protein, those form like more flexible films. And so those might be better for you. Now, I will say, I actually don't think you need strength from protein. So I would even actually look for a leave-in moisturizing conditioner without protein at all. Because just by leaving a leave-in conditioner on your hair, you're going to leave a coating on the hair that's lubricating the hair fiber. And that's going to help reduce breakage. So it's not that it's giving you strength per se, but it's just helping protect your hair without leaving any kind of rigid film on it. So I would say that would be the best option.
That really is how those strengthening claims are made, it's not really strengthening your hair. It's just making it less prone to breaking when you're combing your hair or something like that. If you took we have this thing called a diastron where you take a fiber and you stretch it and you can measure the force it takes to snap it. When a product says, oh, I can make your hair 10 times stronger, when they do that test, it does not make it 10 times stronger in that way. What it does is it makes it, when you're combing your hair, you just get 10 times less breakage.
Exactly.
It doesn't actually make your hair stronger by the fiber anyway.
Yeah. So I would say most products you're going to be fine. Avoid wheat protein, avoid hydrolyzed keratin, and honestly, just use like a really great leave-in conditioner even without protein. And I think you'll find that you'll have less breakage.
Yeah. All right.
Our next question comes to us from a patron, Katie. Hi, Beauty Brains. Hope all is well. I just ordered some Theraplex Barrier Balm, and I was completely blown away. Hopefully it was good, because I don't think she said if it was good or bad. What is special fraction petrolatum, and why does it feel so amazing? Oh, so it's a good blown away.
It is good, yeah.
Is this exclusive to Theraplex's formulations? Thanks, Katie.
Well, Katie, I went to the Theraplex website and I looked at it. This product contains only 3 ingredients.
Whoa, simple. Sometimes simple is the best.
Right. You know what the 3 are?
Well, I didn't look at the link, so I'm going to say
so
special fraction petrolatum's the first one.
That's the first one, yes.
Shea butter's the second.
That is not.
Okay. It's actually very hard to combine shea butter and petrolatum, but one ingredient supplier, Sonneborn, was able to do it.
Sure.
Okay, so it's fragrance.
Nope. All right, I'll just tell you.
Just tell me.
Cyclomethicone.
Uh-huh.
And microcrystalline wax.
Okay, so the cyclomethicone helps the spreadability. Microcrystalline wax helps melting point and giving it structure.
Sure. Yeah, so it's an interesting barrier balm. It's certainly going to barrier, because those are, that's about as inclusive as you're going to get. The cyclomethicone sort of will evaporate off over time, but those other 2 are going to stay there.
Yeah. Now, I hate to be, a Debbie Downer about the cyclomethicone. Hopefully someone from Theraplex is listening. Cyclomethicone is a mixture of D4 and D5, which are 2 volatile silicones that are regulated in the state of California currently.
Yeah.
And they're not permitted in Europe as of, a portion of it, D5, is not allowed as of 2027, but currently you're not allowed to use D4 in products in Europe. So Theraplex will have to reformulate this. Now, the good news is there's things they could reformulate it with, but hopefully they're listening so they can maintain compliance.
When does the California rules kick in? Or is that
I think
now,
January 1st, 2026, I believe, for the cyclomethicone. If it's not already happening, because there's 2 regulations, and one of them's more hair colorants, and I more paid attention to the hair colorants ones, but I think it's 2026.
Yeah, well, Katie, if you like it, you might want to stock up. Right.
Okay, but what about special fraction petrolatum, Perry?
All right, so what does this mean? So special fraction, now it sounds impressive, it's special, but essentially it's just a more refined version of standard petrolatum. And of course, petrolatum has been used in the cosmetic industry safely and effective for a long time. And you can't just use any old petrolatum in the cosmetics. You have to use a specially processed petrolatum. So
everybody does.
Everybody uses special fraction petrolatum. Now, it's the special part is just like a filtered fraction. Maybe it improves the aesthetics or spreadability, but I don't think they've labeled it correctly. You're not supposed to put special fraction petrolatum on there. You're just supposed to use the word petrolatum. So they kind of aren't labeling it correctly, even though maybe their supplier calls it that.
Yeah, or maybe their chemist explained it to them that way, because usually when you use a petrolatum in personal care, you use what's called a United States Pharmacopoeia grade. USP is what it's called. And this is the special fraction, which makes sure it doesn't have any impurities. It's super clean, safe for use, etc. So I have a feeling it was probably explained to them that way.
Yeah, and it makes the consumer think there's something special about it because, well, you asked about it. So, but it's a good well-formulated product, and if you like it, keep using it. There are those concerns about environmental concerns. That's why the cyclomethicone has been being removed from things, and so this formula might not be around like this in the future. So you might want to stock up.
Well, I think our next question is an audio question.
Here it is. Let me go to the tape.
Hey, Beauty Brains. I'm another one who found you through the New York Times, and I'm so happy I did. Thank you so much I've just been looking for something like this forever. Like, what is the real science with all this stuff? Because there's so much hype. Anyway, my questions all center around help. I'm submerged in water, and how do I protect my hair and nails? So I swim every day, and I was told by my stylist to, before I get in the pool, soak my hair in regular water, put a leave-in conditioner in there. I use Garnier Fructis, and then put my swim cap on. And her thinking is that if the hair is full of, quote, regular water, then it can't absorb the chlorinated water, so that would limit damage. I'd love to know if there's any reasoning behind that. I mean, if it's really true. And if so, if the leave-in conditioner helps or just doesn't do anything. I mean, water certainly does get in under the swim cap. Okay, thanks again. Bye-bye.
All right, Valerie. Chlorinated water, soaking it up. This whole thing sounds a little, it sounds a little far-fetched to me. But and also there seems to be, I could see some scientific logic to it. First of all, nobody's done this test, right?
No, there's no really, studies on wet hair versus dry hair plunging in a pool.
So now we're just kind of spitballing and, based on what our experiences are and stuff. And actually, I did a study on chlorinated water. We had a 55-gallon tank drum that we filled with water and did the right amount of chlorine because I was working on the VO5 hot oil product, and we wanted to make a chlorine protective claim for that. And so, we had to make a pool, and you soak the tresses in there, and you measure something that you measure. And we did find that if you coated your hair with VO5 hot oil before you got into the pool, you could protect it to some degree.
Well, this advice from her stylist makes total sense, not because of any magical science. You're right. When you put on a leave-on conditioner, you might have some emollients in there like oils, you might have silicones in there, and those are going to actually coat the hair fiber and reduce water penetration. And ideally you would be getting your hair soaking wet with non-chlorinated water beforehand, so don't dip in the pool and then put the conditioner on. But as we mentioned, there aren't really studies on wet hair versus dry hair, but just in going into the science in general, if you have really damaged hair, chlorine is going to suck into your hair like crazy. And so if you lighten your hair, color your hair, go out in the sun, this is definitely like a must do because the chlorine will go in. If your hair is virgin, meaning you don't chemically treat it, get it colored, permed, you don't spend a lot of time in the sun, etc. Your hair is probably going to be fine, but it certainly can't harm to put on this leave-in conditioner beforehand. The only thing I would say is, just make sure you're using a swim cap because eventually the water from the pool will remove the conditioner from your hair. And all you're doing is gunking up the pool filter with emollients.
Right.
And your skin oils and stuff.
The swim cap will protect your hair from the water to some extent. It's not going to completely protect it, but, for the most part, it's going to do better than if you weren't wearing one.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess bottom line, just make sure the leave-in conditioner you're using has oils and has emollients and is probably kind of a little, we'll say, heavier or greasier.
Right. Now, her question about the Garnier Fructis leave-in, is that a good one? Garnier puts together good products. I'd say so. Garnier
makes great products. I would have to say from a mass market perspective, this is probably one of my favorite brands. The reason I think this could be a good option is it uses amodimethicone, which is a positively charged silicone, sticks to the hair, helps reduce frizz. That's how they get their frizz reduction claim. But I think this would be really good to protect those negatively charged areas on your hair that may be more susceptible to chlorine uptake in the hair. It doesn't really have a whole lot of oil.
Yeah.
You know, it lists argan oil on there, but is it really in there? You know, I'm sure technically it is, you know.
Yeah.
But the
According to
amidine
claim,
methaquone is a
it is.
good choice for it. And it's affordable. So you don't want to put an expensive leave-in on your hair just so you can go swimming. So I think it could be a good option.
Right. All right. Looks like we have one from Jessica. Oh, another one asking just about you. And hello, Jessica says, hello, I recently watched Valerie's Unveiling Hair Care Chemistry on YouTube. Wait, you're going on YouTube without me?
Oh, did I do that? It must have been an interview or something. I probably did do it, but I don't remember it.
All right.
I mentioned you. I'm sure I did.
Oh, that's good. All right. So she says, I watched Valerie's Unveiling Hair Chemistry on YouTube, and the distinction between direct dyes and oxidative dyes were discussed. I understand that direct dyes interact with the hair fiber surface, and since some are cationic, the ionic bonding makes sense to me. However, I'm starting to understand how purple shampoo, which contains external DNC violet 2, deposits or interacts on the hair. Given that it's an anionic dye, wouldn't the anionic hair surface repel it? And does deposition occur through coacervation or another mechanism in play? And then it says, additionally, some users find these shampoos too strong, leading to staining. This raises the question, what is staining, considering the dye isn't penetrating the hair or chemically reacting with it? I also heard Valerie mention that toners often contain direct dyes, which made me wonder, what exactly defines a toner? Valerie, could you briefly clarify the difference between oxidative hair dyes and hair toners? Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, great questions. So violet 2 is a purple dye, hence the name violet, or hence the word violet in its name. And it does have a negative charge. Hair is negatively charged when it's damaged and you're in a specific pH range. And so we have to remember with hair, opposites attract, right? So if you have a positive charge and a negative charge, they're going to be attracted to each other. But if you have two negative charges, they're not going to be attracted to each other.
Well, I just want to point out about that, though. I mean, it's sort of a simple way to say, oh, yeah, where it's damaged, it's positively charged, and that's where... It's true, but hair is made up of amino acids, and some parts have negative charges where it's damaged, but there are also free positive charges there, too. So whether your molecule has a charge one way or another, there is still mechanisms depending on the pH and the isoelectric point. Really, there is just a mechanism by which it will stick to the hair too.
Just because hair is negatively charged when it's damaged doesn't mean it's totally negatively charged. You're still going to have positive sites on the hair, especially around the pH that most products are used. You're going to have a mixture of both. At a higher pH, you're going to have predominant negative charges. At a lower pH, you'll have predominant positive charges. And by lower pH, I mean like a pH of 2, okay, which most products are not that. So it's not that violet 2 is negatively charged and it absolutely can't. There are some positively charged sites it's going to stick to. Additionally, even though it is negatively charged and it's a really big purple molecule, some of it does penetrate the hair because when you're shampooing your hair or even just your hair is wet, it swells. And so it's not going to totally penetrate, but it might get wedged in to a little space. You don't get a lot of purple toning with this color, and the reason is just those reasons we just mentioned. So you have to use the product time over time again because of the low propensity for it to stick to the hair or penetrate to the hair. So hopefully that explains how violet number 2 works. People do complain that they are staining, but they actually stain your skin, not your hair, because your skin is actually more positively charged than your hair is. And so the dye wants to stick to your skin more than it does your hair.
Yeah. And I think some of the lipids in your natural moisturizing factor and stuff, that part of the molecule,
loves it.
Hydrocarbon part is going to essentially associate with it, and that helps to stick it there too.
Yeah. So whenever I do, like little mini hair color seminars, I always talk about how these dyes, which are External DNC violet number 2 is actually an acid dye. Its acid nomenclature is acid violet 43. These are just staining, and so that's just something, you have to look out for. Now, in terms of toners, so a toner is chemistry agnostic, so it doesn't really matter what you put in it because it's really about the intended purpose of the product, not the chemistry it's made of. A toner is a product that's like stained glass for your hair. So it doesn't change your existing hair color. You don't have to do a chemical reaction necessarily to get the product to work. It's really about taking a light color and applying it over your natural color to modify it. So in the case, if you have blonde hair and you don't want it to be brassy and warm, you would tone it with a purple or a violet, let's say, because violet and yellow cancel each other out. If your hair were more orange, its opposite color is blue. And so your toner would be more blue-based and you would cancel it out. Or if you want your hair to be warmer, you would apply a red, yellow, or orange toner over it if, warm tones were your thing. So
and use a hairdryer too.
Oh my gosh. That's terrible.
I do want to point out about toner. We're not talking about the toner that you use on your face.
Or in a printer ink cartridge.
Or in a printer ink. No.
We're talking about hair color toner.
Right. That it is kind of confusing that they would use the same word for two different personal care products.
Yeah, I guess that is confusing. Yeah. Very true.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So sometimes a toner can contain oxidative hair dyes, but I think you would only find that maybe in like a professional product. Sometimes, a consumer product, depending on what it is. And so then you would find oxidative dyes in that product and it would require use of a developer. But many toners, even in the salon professional world, only contain direct dyes because you just want to stain the hair. Again, like stained glass, you don't need intensive or damaging chemistry to do that.
Okay, well, I'll put a link to your little YouTube video interview. It looks like it was an hour long. Wow.
Oh, gosh. I sure can talk a lot. The microphone is very intoxicating.
All right, well, we have time for one more from Electra.
Electra says, hello, huge fan of the pod. I have a question about integrity, stability, sustained efficacy of L-Ascorbic Acid in, say, the Timeless or the CE Ferulic Acid product by SkinCeuticals. The new Ordinary Multi-Antioxidant Radiance Serum has 1% Ascorbyl Glucoside in it. I called into the Ordinary and they said it would be fine to layer on top, but most things I've read online said you shouldn't layer different vitamin C's. I love the antioxidant this product provides, but maintaining the integrity of my L-ascorbic acid is paramount. Would this be okay to apply the L-ascorbic acid first, let it dry down, and then apply the Ordinary products afterwards so as not to mess up the pH of the L-ascorbic acid? Thank you for making science education free to the public. Electra, an engineering and biotechnology student.
Well, thanks for the question, Electra. Well, L-ascorbic acid is, of course, notoriously unstable, especially when it's in water and high pH products. So a lot of stuff you buy that's already on the shelves is probably degraded already, so you're not going to get the effects that you would if you made it fresh.
Well, let's pretend the CE Ferulic product by SkinCeuticals, which is a significant sum of money per ounce, does not turn a color, and I feel like, granted they patented the technology and patents don't mean anything, but it is a L'Oreal owned brand now. And so I feel like if they say the ascorbic acid is stable, they would have some burden of proof for that.
You could have more faith in what they're getting versus some random L-ascorbic acid product on the market.
Okay, so let's pretend it's stable and Electra is getting the full 15% advertised.
Right. It is supposedly formulated at a low pH, 3.2. That's going to keep it stable as long as possible. The Ordinary's multi-antioxidant radiance serum uses Ascorbyl Glucoside and other antioxidants, and it's formulated supposedly at a more skin-friendly pH of 5 to 6. So now you're, I guess those things would conflict, the pHs. Although when you put these things on your skin, the environmental pH that the product is at changes right there. So it's not the same pH as it was in the product.
Yeah, and your skin does normalize its pH back over time. So there's actually a lot of data in peer-reviewed literature studies. Mostly I've looked at it with soap application because people say, wow, soap really destroys the pH, natural pH of your skin. Initially it does, but your skin recovers in just a couple hours to its natural pH. Like it starts producing items to help it recover.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would say the most important part is to get the ascorbic acid to the skin and to give it some time to penetrate if you were concerned about any buffering with the second pH product, because it would take your skin a little bit to recover. So just me personally, if I were worried, I would probably let it dry down a little bit.
Yeah. Maybe
and then
wait
I would
5
apply
or 10 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, but you still have the ascorbic acid on your skin. So some of it will get absorbed. Some of it might get converted to a ascorbate type, if this, pH on your skin changes it. But eventually that'll get absorbed and then it'll be enzymatically converted to free ascorbic acid anyway. So I don't know. I think tomato, but given the price point of the CE ferulic, I would just wait. What's the harm?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's not going to be some huge extra benefit by layering them that you would notice anyway.
Exactly. So, yeah, I would just wait.
Speaking of notice, do you notice the sounds?
It's not an ad playing because we are an ad-free podcast and we do this for fun, but it is the music telling us it's time to go. Thanks for listening.
Hey, if you get a chance, can you head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a review or a comment. We do read those comments too. That's how I knew that everybody just hated the AI voices last time.
Thank you, everybody.
That's going to help other people find the show. And sure, we do have a full docket of beauty questions to answer.
Speaking of questions, we love audio questions. If you have a question and you want to get your real authentic voice on the show, just record one on your smartphone. Very easy to do. Every smartphone has a recording app. You could also use your computer. Email it to thebeautybrains@gmail.com, or we even have a form in the show notes of this episode you can use to submit that audio question.
Yeah. And the Beauty Brains are on Patreon. You might have noticed we do not have advertising because we feel if we advertise something, then we kind of is endorsing it, so we don't want to do that. We just want to give our honest opinions about everything, and to do that, we don't take advertising. But it does cost money to do the show, and so to do that, we rely on support from Patreon. And so if you like what we do and you want us to keep doing it, go to patreon.com/thebeautybrains and subscribe at any level. You also get a transcript of the show, and your questions are answered in a more prompt manner.
Also, follow us on our various social media accounts, which, in the light of our recent travels, have probably gone dormant. On Instagram, we're at The Beauty Brains 2018. On X, we're at The Beauty Brains. On Blue Sky, we're at The Beauty Brains. We have a Facebook page and a TikTok.
Yeah, we have all of that stuff. And we also, take donations to support our cat habit.
I know. I'm now on auto subscribe with the fancy feast for Pretty Kitty. But anyway, thanks again for listening, everyone, and remember, be brainy about your beauty.
Thanks, everyone. Kittens.